Joe Biden received $75 million from Wall Street corporations, hedge funds, Goldman Sachs, etc. The only person in history who got more money as a presidential candidate was Hillary Clinton. Donald Trump got about 12 to 15 million, something in that range. So let's say four times less than what Joe Biden came away with. But Joe Biden goes around giving speeches about how he's the anti-Wall Street candidate. Just like now he's saying he's the anti-inflation candidate and he wants to bring prices down. They are gaslighting you. Biden lies to you all a lot, to all of us. Just want to remind everybody of that. Clay was rocking the show solo Friday. Let me call in from California to weigh in on the Darth Vader speech he gave that last week. One of the most bizarre political own goals, unforced errors, missteps I have ever seen. And it just goes to show you, don't overestimate. Yeah, they're ruthless and they have no principles to protect, but the Democrats aren't strategic geniuses. Let's not get ahead of ourselves here. There's plenty of ways you can see they make really idiotic decisions. They have huge built-in advantages, and they're also very dedicated to the cause. But Joe Biden is somebody who I think, one, has been able to get away with the same routine for about 40 years now. And I make fun of it a lot on the show, and Clay knows this. I really believe it. You know, he's Scranton Joe, and he's your friend, and he's just rolled up sleeves and all this stuff. Joe Biden has been going back and forth between either taxpayer or Biden family-owned mansions for the last 30 years or so, okay? This is not a guy who's a man of, by, and for the people. He's not making his peanut butter and jelly sandwich before he goes into the coal mine every day. But he gets away with this, just old down the street Joe routine. He tweeted this out over the weekend, Clay. We understand something that MAGA Republicans in Congress don't. Wall Street didn't build this country. Working people did. Joe Biden received $75 million from Wall Street corporations, hedge funds, Goldman Sachs, etc. The only person in history who got more money as a presidential candidate was Hillary Clinton. Donald Trump got about 12 to 15 million, something in that range. So let's say four times less than what Joe Biden came away with. But Joe Biden goes around giving speeches about how he's the anti-Wall Street candidate. Just like now he's saying he's the anti-inflation candidate and he wants to bring prices down. They are gaslighting you. Joe Biden is a Wall Street stooge. He was also a credit card company stooge. The Democrats kept the carried interest loophole, which is a massively profitable and important carve-out in the tax code that only helps hedge fund managers, private equity barons. That is it. Nobody else uses that thing. And he's going around giving speeches in Milwaukee and in Pennsylvania, Clay, about, Joe Biden's the everyman for the working folks. It's such pandering. It's so condescending, and he's such a jerk.
I don't disagree with any of that.
Oh,
and what's particularly disappointing is how few people can see through it. So he said, if Democrat, I don't think we have the audio, but he said, and I'm paraphrasing, if Republicans really cared about inflation, they would have voted for the Inflation Reduction Act. Did you see that?
Yep.
And we know, people are dumb. So when they hear something called the Inflation Reduction Act, they think, it must reduce inflation. Actually, it spent $700 billion plus. And all of the independent economists who looked at this bill said either it will have no impact, that's the best case scenario on inflation, or it will make inflation worse. So when you label something, we think truth in labeling, right? The Inflation Reduction Act actually further ballooned our federal spending, and most economists who looked at it objectively said it will likely, at minimum, do nothing and more likely than not increase inflation overall. So we have an Inflation Reduction Act that actually increases inflation, which is positively Orwellian, where we continue to define things by the opposite of what they actually are.
And I think this is so important. You see how we're not looking at these issues and have different pathways that may or may not have some upside, some downside. We'd like to think that in politics, they have their way, we have our way. And, there's some good stuff from what they want to do, but we think there's better stuff from what we want to do. They are just blatantly doing things now that are the opposite of what they say they're trying to accomplish to fool people. They are actively trying to fool. The inflation bill is a perfect example. They're calling a bill the Inflation Reduction Act that will not reduce inflation. That
Correct.
is third world dictatorship, bullcrap, Orwellian lying. Biden does this all the time, though. Biden is one of the nastiest people in politics, one of the biggest liars in politics. And, even some Democrats have started to say, maybe we should stop lecturing Republicans so much about Trump and corruption when clearly the president's son right now was selling influence to the tune of millions of dollars. We are not all morons. What happened to the Clinton Foundation, Clay? The Clintons were selling influence to Hillary's future presidential campaign to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. We're supposed to ignore that, too. Joe Biden here, this was this was one for the ages, telling everybody that they beat Big Pharma this year. Watch this one.
For decades, Big Pharma tried to block giving lower drug prices for those on Medicare or anywhere else. For decades, Big Pharma won year in, year out because they owned chunks of the Congress, because they had to help, like your senior senator, Ron Johnson, who said, I want to say what he said. He said he opposed lowering drug costs because it would result in punishing the pharmaceutical industry. Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. Come on, man. Not this year. We beat Pharma this year. We beat Pharma this year, and it mattered. We're going to change people's lives. We finally beat Pharma.
Finally beat Pharma by mandating shot 5 now, Clay? That the government, the taxpayer pays for? Shot 5, going on shot 6. The Biden speech last week, which I know I was out and you were talking about it on Friday, was bizarre unless you think about how they really have convinced themselves that Donald Trump is a white supremacist, will try to coup, try to destroy the country, try to destroy the United States of America. They repeat this stuff all the time. There are enough libs, unfortunately, who actually believe it, but it was a blunder, I think, politically, which is why they're trying to walk it back a little bit. Here's Biden doing his, let me be clear.
I want to be very clear up front. Not every Republican is a MAGA Republican. Not every Republican embraces that extreme ideology. I know because I've been able to work with mainstream Republicans my whole career. But the extreme MAGA Republicans in Congress have chosen to go backwards, full of anger, violence, hate, and division. But together, we can and we must choose a different path. Forward. No, I really mean it. We have to. A future of unity, of hope, of optimism. We're going to choose to build a better America. A better America.
No, I really mean it. Not a joke, friend. Clay, he just gave a speech that even his supporters realized, oh my God, this looks awful last week.
Yes.
Where he's talking about MAGA Republicans who support violence. This is just not true. There's no MAGA movement that's saying we're going to overthrow the federal government through use of arms and get rid of all this. But I guess at this point it just doesn't matter. Democrats just want to hear what they want to hear, because here's the problem. Their guy stinks at his job. The country's not doing well. All the polls show it. So instead of looking at that reality, you're semi-fascists. It's a little emotional safe space they create for themselves. Unfortunately, it's delusional.
Well, it makes total sense to me, sadly, because we've been talking about what is Biden going to run on. He's going to run on I'm not Trump. That is Biden's midterm message. And frankly, if Biden is the nominee at 82 years old in 2024, his message then is going to be I'm not Trump too, because they look at the data and there are independent voters who are turned off by Donald Trump. And they believe that they can move some of those independent voters who otherwise are recognizing inflation, who see that crime is out of control, who see that the southern border is an unmitigated disaster, who recognize that things are not going well in Europe based on the war in Ukraine. Everything that Biden has touched is a disaster, so he can't run on what he's actually done. He has to run against Trump. And this is the same campaign that they ran in 2020. Joe Biden didn't run for election. He ran against Trump. That's what Biden's entire campaign was in 2020. And he had such a rig job in effect behind him that they could hide him in the basement and they could, Weekend at Bernie style, drag him across the finish line. And that's what happened. And he's going to try to now do that, which is why, Buck, it's not a coincidence that they waited 18 months and suddenly Donald Trump's documents at Mar-a-Lago were such a huge threat to American democracy that they had to raid Mar-a-Lago in early August, getting ready for the midterms. I mean, are you kidding? It's a clear pivot to that as the story.
The fundamental promises of the Biden presidency: unity, normalcy, optimism, strong economy, jobs, jobs for everyone, all this stuff. It's all been a failure. I mean, all of the promises based or gauged against the reality have been a failure. So this is why they want to talk about all this other stuff. This is why they move the discussion to the threat to our democracy. And they've got all these pundits on MSNBC and on CNN, although less so at CNN these days. They're doing a bit of a house cleaning over there. But saying, it's all about Trump. Trump's not even on any ballot. I mean, it's amazing when you think about it. But they'd much rather us all be talking or talking about Trump and defending Trump against their lunacy than looking at, this guy Fetterman, for example, that Dr. Oz is up against. Dr. Oz is a smart, self-made guy who would do a good job in the role as senator from Pennsylvania for a lot of folks, okay? He doesn't have to do this. He wants to do this because he thinks that he would be a good representative for those people. Fetterman is a buffoon who isn't even healthy enough to be senator. He might not be healthy enough really for any taxing job right now. And they don't want us talking about that. The people that are pushing the agenda, I was just out in California, the people that are pushing the agenda in the media and in Hollywood include folks like, do you see this, Clay? Jennifer Lawrence reveals she has recurring nightmares about Tucker Carlson and says that she's still trying to forgive her conservative family for supporting Trump in 2016. Like, the libs are not okay. There's something wrong with them. I mean,
if I'm Tucker Carlson, I have a lot of fun with the fact that Jennifer Lawrence is dreaming about me in any way. I mean, that seems like a big win for Tucker Carlson. Nightmares or not, the fact that she's laying in bed dreaming about him, I might open with that if I were Tucker. I mean, that seems like a big win for him.
I just think Jennifer Lawrence did some good work. Not gonna lie, but she's crazy.
She was phenomenal as Katniss Everdeen and I think she's pretty talented. Not bad looking again, which is why I think big win for Tucker that she's dreaming about him.
There you go.